Yo, 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 what it do, what it be? It's your boy Agent ANT ripping the spell block agency coming to you with an Apex Legendary commentary. And today, we gonna talk, well, last time on Kingpins and Capos, I talked about Murder Inc. was the enforcement crew for, like, the Jewish and pretty much the national crime syndicate in America. And today I'm going to be diving into the origins of the Mafia and how the secret crime syndicates, try saying that 3 times fast, how the secret crime syndicates influence spread across Italy to the US. So let's get it. So the Mafia as we know it today can trace its origins all the way back to like the late 1800s. That's when it first got popularized, and let me get into that. So, the concrete origins are shrouded in mystery. There's not really a point where you can go back and be like, okay, well, this is the first ever Mafia, Don family, stuff like that. There's not really nothing like that. There's really little to no knowledge of the hierarchy or even the level of organization that the early Mafia clans had or that they used, really. But the first mention of the term mafia came from a dispatch, I guess, for mafia in a criminal sense, I should say. It came from a dispatch from Palermo to Rome in 1865. And in 1867, a police report described the initiation ritual where the image of a saint is burned. If you've ever played Mafia 1, 2... I don't know if it happens in 3, but for sure it happens in 1 and 2. They have that little burning of the saint thing. I believe it might have happened in the Godfather movie as well, but I'd have to rewatch that movie. It's one of my favorite movies too, and I don't know. But anyways, so that was like the late 1800s, and the police were just catching on that there was a secret organization of criminals not only operating right under their noses, but because these criminals, quote unquote, were actually better at doing the police's job, like in these times it was retrieving stolen cattle and, solving crimes or kidnappings or, thievery, break-in, stuff like that. These criminals were better at doing the police's job than the police and serving up their own version of justice. And it was actually, they did a better job and it was more effective than the undermanned police at the time. So pretty much the people sympathize with these mafia groups because mafia groups actually help the people to a certain extent. And really, the people turned towards the mafia to help them because throughout history, Sicily, it's the island right at the end of the boot of Italy, and it's never really been, it's kind of been looked down upon, not really looked down upon, but kind of been ignored by, everybody who kind of slid through, and I'll get to that more in a minute. And so these criminals, like I said, were better at the police's job than the police, and like I said, it was easier to side with the criminals who were actually there to watch over your stuff and get it back than, police who, might take months or, crime might not even get solved at all if you call the police. But the first mentions of the word mafia appeared in the late 1800s, like I said, 1860s, but it's really a spin-off of another Italian word, mafi, which is a word describing a local militia, and even the term mafioso didn't really have any criminal connotations at first, but then I can't remember the play or who wrote the play, but there was a famous play around this time in Italy about a group of prisoners. It kind of had a lot of parallels to the mafia. It had secret codes. related to Omerta. I'll get to that more probably in the next video when I'll get to more on like rumors or even like myths of the mafia. But anyways, so like I was said, to kind of keep it in the simplest terms and give a little perspective to things, the island of Sicily, throughout history, yeah, I'm a poet, I ain't even know it, but anyways, they had a little reputation of being invaded. The Phoenicians, Romans, Arabs, French, and the Spanish, they all slid through Sicily at one point. And by the 19th century, they developed small armed clans and militias called Mafia to protect themselves. The Sicilians did. So, you had the best thieves and underworld criminals banding together in groups, and they formed their own codes of conduct, quote unquote. And you're going to hear me use that term a lot, especially when talking about the mafia. And eventually they became so powerful, these criminals and these mafia, so to speak, they grew so powerful in number and influence, they started extorting landowners for protection. They started swaying elections. Man, I be rhyming a lot, and I didn't. Anyways, of course, when gambling was outlawed, they set up underground casinos too. So, really, the seeds of the mafia were planted probably sometime in the late 1600s to sometime in the 1700s, and it didn't really gain any notoriety until the late 1800s when it started to kind of maybe take a criminal twist, it sounds like. But, I mean, when it really started officially being, a criminal group, enterprise, organization, is really up for speculation and debate. So, in the 1870s, Roman officials gave the mafia the green light, pun intended, to go after the more independent and dangerous criminal organizations. And in exchange, they would let the mafia continue their racketeering in Sicily. They thought this would only be a short-term kind of thing. The mafia quickly used this short-term, kind of deal to maneuver themselves deeper into political power to grow their influence and, of course, their pockets. So, now during this time, there was a couple other groups, such as the Drangheta and the Camorra. The first name I probably butchered, I'm sorry, but those three, the Mafia, the Drangheta, and the Camorra, they've worked with and against the Mafia, or those three organizations have worked for and against each other throughout their existences. All of them can trace their lineages back to around the same time, 1800s, so it's kind of... but neither the Drangheta or the Camorra, neither of those organizations are as structured as well as the Mafia, and it showed when more than 4,000 Italians immigrated from Italy and Sicily between the 1880s and 1920s. Some of them, of course, were connected to Mafia clans, Camorra clans, and Drangheta families, which led to a war, or I shouldn't say the Drangheta families, I think it's just the Drangheta, but it led to a war in the 1920s between the Camorra families and the Sicilian Mafia. Again, Drangheta never really has had or has an American presence. Mostly been the Sicilian Mafia, and I'll get to why. But in the 1920s, the Mafia family, or the Sicilian Mafia families, one of the original ones, went to war with one of the Camorra families to kind of take control of, I believe it was Little Italy in New York. So some Mafia members even settled in Canada, but we'll discuss Canadian crime syndicates in other videos. But for now, we'll stick with the Sicilian and American Mafias. So from 1900 to 1920, more than 2 million Italians immigrated to America, and this was during Mussolini's rise to power. In 1924, he just so happened, not just so happened, but he was probably he was passing through Piana dei Greci. I probably butchered that name, but that's my best Italian accent. And he met with the mayor, Francesco Cuccia, and that's my Mexican accent mixed with the Italian accent coming through. But anyways, pretty much Francesco, the mayor, told Mussolini that, he ain't really had to roll around with all the police escorts that he did, because, Cuccia had mob ties. He had a reputation being a mobster. That's how he kind of got his position. But Mussolini basically told him he didn't need the mob's protection. Cuccia, or Cuccia, I don't know. Cuccia, it definitely got to be, that's how it's pronounced, right? Anyways, pretty much Cuccia took this as disrespect. And when Mussolini gave his speech in the town center, Cuccia and the mob made sure I wonder how many times I'm going to butcher this name. Anyways, but he probably realized Mussolini at this point, because Cuccia made it so that nobody really went to Mussolini's speech. Like, only a handful of people showed up, and it was like peasants and nobody of real importance. So Mussolini felt the disrespect that Cuccia felt, in a sense. So not only this, he probably realized, okay, these guys are powerful enough to do this. I mean, granted, the story may or may not be true. I mean, from all accounts, that's how Mussolini's war on the mob started, but it also could have been the fact that Mussolini knew about the mob's influence, and he knew that the mob could potentially undermine his power and authority, especially if they were looked at as sympathetic figures, as they had been in the past. Now, he took the first step and kind of demonized them and made it so that they were looked at as criminals, which, of course they were, but instead of him being seen as a tyrant, he made sure to use them as the scapegoat for, why Italy was so corrupt, which, we wasn't far off, but it's not like, history has shown Mussolini wasn't much better. But anyways, probably get to that maybe in another video or something when we talk about like the Renaissance or something like that. Or maybe not, because I think the Renaissance definitely came before. But we'll definitely get into that when we cover like World War II and stuff like that. But anyways, gotten off topic quite a bit, so let's try and stay on track. So as Italians poured into the U.S. during Mussolini's rise to power, the mob was also suppressed in Italy during this time, basically because he appointed Caesar Mori as the prefect of Palermo, and as prefect of Palermo, he gave him the special power, or gave him the power to fight the mafia in Sicily. And like I said, although the mafia in Sicily wasn't completely destroyed during Mussolini's reign, the mafia's power was severely suppressed. And as Italians immigrated and poured into the U.S. during this period, like I said, some of them had mob ties. So as the mob was suppressed in Italy, it spread its vines over to America and other countries and began to thrive. The first mention of the word mafia, or not the word mafia, but the first mention of the mafia group being in the United States is 1869. And it was actually in New Orleans, of all places. And first report comes from a New Orleans Times newspaper article describing well-known Sicilian murderers, counterfeiters, and thieves, and settling around in the New Orleans area. In the 1890s, Paul Kelly, who was born Paolo Vaccarelli, started the 5 Points Gang, and during 1900s, the 5 Points Gang warred with Monk Eastman's gang in New York, take control of, certain territories and stuff like that. And Monk and his gang were actually the predecessors to the Jewish mob in America. But again, we'll save more about the Jewish mob and their kind of history for, videos in the future. But just like the Eastman gang came before the Jewish mob, the 5 Points gang would go on to become the foundation of Murder Inc., the Chicago Outfit, and the American Mafia families. And they would also be a part of the National Crime Syndicate, all of those organizations, to my knowledge, even the Jewish Mafia. But because as Paul Kelly's power and influence grew, he kind of distanced himself from the mob, yet kept his ties. He kind of moved on to more legitimate endeavors, and that led to the 5 Points gang basically dissolving. Several members of the 5 Points gang went on to even lead their own criminal enterprises, like the ones I talked about. Joe Torrio and Paul Kelly started the National Crime Syndicate. Al Capone, yes, the Al Capone, was originally in New York at first. Ended up being the head of the Chicago Outfit. And of course, Charles Lucky Luciano was, could have been the boss of all bosses, don of all dons, however you want to put it. He, all three of those guys were very prolific for their time. So, in 1915, the original Morello crime family of Sicily went to war with a Camorra faction based out in Coney Island. This is the one I was talking about before. And basically it was Coney Island in Brooklyn. And this war lasted for about 2 years before the Camorra faction, with help from the Navy Street Gang, a small town street gang in New York, way back in the day. They killed Nicholas Morello, one of the younger Morello's sons. Set him up in a trap, smoked him, and before the Morellos could even get revenge or anything, a Navy Street gang member named Ralph the Barber Daniello folded, went informant, crippling the Camorra's power in America. Their boss was actually supposedly killed by his own men because they thought he was gonna rat. I don't know how true that is, but everybody was going down that was the first time that I saw that in America, at least, whole organization went down. Before it even got started, Camorras really didn't have much of a base, obviously, if the Sicilians were able to muscle in on their territory like that, because I guess this all took place after a guy in the town of what's it called? He was the so-called king of Little Italy, and then he got murdered, and then there was a big old war over his territories, and that's pretty much what led to the war, and that's what led to the that whole Camorras being pretty much dissolved, and there hasn't been really much of a Camorra influence in America since then that I know of. No, they probably operate here, but never had an influence as strong as the Mafia, for sure. But 2 years later, in 1917, America added the 18th Amendment to the Constitution, banning alcohol, which led to the Mafia's power and influence rising, of course, with alcohol's lucrative profit capabilities too. Which we'll get into the next episode. We'll get into more of the Mafia's bootlegging, and that's more Al Capone's time, and Bugsy Siegel getting into Vegas and stuff like that in the 1920s, 40s and 50s World War time type stuff. But hope y'all enjoyed the video. Gonna definitely go more into the origins on the Mafia, probably do a part 2 on this, maybe even a part 3, because there is a lot of history to cover. Because the 20s all the way up and through the 50s were probably the golden age, or the heyday of the American Mafia. But even in the 60s, 70s, and even mid to late, and even late 80s, they were still still getting bread, still operating on a high scale, just, still getting money. Just the hustles switched up a little bit, and we'll kind of talk more about that. Like I said, in future videos. But so like I said, more hot content dropping soon. So stay tuned. Just dropped 2 videos, actually 3, because I just did this podcast on the Spell Block channel. So y'all go subscribe over there. Got a podcast with me and my homies. Just mainly talking about sports, NFL. When basketball season starts up, talking more about that. As we get bigger, we'll drop more. Like I said, more hot content dropping, baby. But yeah, y'all, be safe out there, y'all. Don't get smoked. You see me going crazy with this whole with Gibraltar. I think, oh, yep. I think one of them actually slip up at some point. If not, then it happened already, I think. Oh, maybe not. Oh, maybe it did, because... Oh, no, it's coming. Yep, because I see both of them running up right here. Throw out 2 nades. I thought it was going to hit at least one of them. It didn't. Just wasted a nade right there. And I don't know how I saw this dude right here in front of me. He tried to melee me. He did melee me, so I had to knock his ass out real quick. Hey, and then finish him. You know how I do. But yeah, y'all, stay safe out here, y'all. Y'all see me get this dub, go crazy with Gibraltar. I had another gameplay with Caustic that I'll probably be dropping. Maybe just a live, a little short commentary. Kind of just keep the hot content dropping, you feel me? So, yeah, y'all. Dang. Gotta hunt down the other 2 now. And this was crazy. I almost shot the what's her name out of the air. Dang, I really can't remember her name. Valkyrie, I believe her name is. But look at me. Great teammate, bro. Middle of a gunfight. I got faith in my homie that he's gonna protect me. Go ahead, y'all. Don't end this out. They gotta press us if they want to get this dub or want to try and come back. Nah, this sudden death, baby. Making big plays. We are the champions. No, but anyways, y'all. Like I said, be safe. Don't get smoked. It's been your boy, Agent A&T, repping the Spell Block Agency, and I'm out. Peace.